Welcome, everybody, back to our regular Sunday interview here at the Veil of Sound. And I am very happy to have two members of a band here who, first of all, taught me how to pronounce the band's name. And second of all, who just released, I would say, an example of magic in music. So I'm very, very happy to have Brittany and Jeff from Rwake here on the show. So, first of all, folks, thanks for joining.
Oh, thank you so much for having us. We really, really appreciate it.
It is definitely our pleasure. And to make it clear why I'm speaking about magic, their new record, The Return of Magic, has been released via Relapse on March 14th, so just a few weeks ago. If you haven't checked it out, please, 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 everybody do so. But before we talk about the album, the first thing that I always ask here on The Veil of Sound is, what kind of band merch, shirt, by your band or any other band would you like to pluck right now? I'll give you a moment to think about it while I pluck my old friend ALN in Meesmore. Always great to listen to some good drone doom black metal. Have you guys anything to pluck?
I mean, besides our stuff,
Yes.
I do want to plug the fact that Tenhi is one of my favorite bands from Finland, and if any of the members of Tenhi are watching, thank you for all of your great music.
Yeah, that is
Well,
definitely
and I'll
true.
go ahead. I guess I'll plug the shirt I'm wearing. It's a an Oklahoma band, Medicine Horse.
Okay.
It's awesome. They're awesome.
Yeah, Oklahoma and the
But
vicinity is putting out some great music at the moment, right? Yeah, that's cool.
yeah, they've always had a really good scene,
Yeah,
surprisingly.
yeah. I mean, like they got some bad football teams soon as shit.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna get backlash for that one. Anyway, so you are releasing The Return of Magic now after nearly 13 and a half years of, I don't want to say silence, but 13 and a half years since your last studio album, Rest. Um, how does it feel to be back, first of all?
Wonderful. I mean, playing music is pure catharsis for us. So,
Mhm.
having that is really, important in all of our lives, and especially, in the times that we're living at right now in the United
Mhm.
States. Things are pretty difficult, to say the least. So, it's really nice. I think it's something that we really need right now, and I think it's something that
Mhm.
that Americans and people all over the world need as well.
And when
Yeah.
we were gone for 13 years, but we were still playing music and other projects, and we were still communicating amongst each other and stuff. And so after 13 years, you kind of you've watched the scene grow over these 13 years, and you've watched music evolve and get better and better, and the bands just get better and better with every year. And so you kind of don't know whenever you come back how the scene will embrace you, or kind of what will happen. And as soon as we released the Return of Magic video, we were just floored that people were still right there with us, and the amount of love and support has been overwhelming. I mean, we worked really hard on this record and that video, and we just work really hard on whatever we're doing, because we want to keep that high level of quality, of everything we do. So we were confident in it, but you just never know until you put it out there. And as soon as we put it out there, it was just like this love everywhere. So it was really nice, even though we were gone for that long. It was really nice what we walked back into.
So when did the first thoughts of, okay, let's get back, let's write music, let's get this thing going again? When did that first pop up?
It was during COVID when we officially decided. There had been quite a few times before that, but it
Mhm.
was during COVID when we officially decided that all of us were going to try to set time aside to,
Mhm.
that we realized it was important for us to all be making music together again, and we were going to try to carve out time to ensure that we do that. And we all have very busy lives, busy. Some of us have very busy careers, and so we just we had to come to the conclusion that everybody was going to make their best effort to make it happen. Because before that, we just didn't have the time to dedicate to the music, what the music deserves. We can't just, half-ass it. It deserves more attention than that. And we were honest with ourselves, knowing that we didn't have that kind of time to devote to it until then, when we decided, yes, we will devote the time to that.
Yeah, it was kind of weird in 2018. Sorry, in 2018. Okay. Yeah, in 2018, I just started hearing this music in my head it was clearly Wake music, and luckily I have enough equipment and I've got enough. I can play, guitar, bass, drums, and so I was able to take these sounds that I was hearing, and I was able to capture them. And that started in 2018, like I said, and within 5 weeks, I was able to record an hour's worth of music that was clearly Wake stuff, and I was sending it out to everyone in the band. And we were still pretty spread out. We have a member in Ohio, we have in Florida, and so we're pretty spread out all over the country.
So you like people from states with bad football teams? Okay, I get it.
Yeah, well, over those years that we weren't kind of inactive, everybody kind of spread out over the United States, and so we were just sending everything out, and everyone was really liking it, and so that's kind of when the spark really started. But it wasn't until COVID when we really started sharing files and collaborating remotely.
Did that then also coincide with the lineup change that you have? You have a new guitar player on board.
Yeah, so during that down period, our guitar players kind of went their separate ways. No hard feelings or anything like that. But just their lives went in different directions. And so we tried, once we decided in 2020, we tried a couple of different guitar players, and it nothing was really sticking. And Jeff brought up, he was like, I've got this guy that I used to work with, and he's like, this kid, which he's not really a kid, but compared to us, 30 years old is a kid. And so he brought him to band practice, and he had learned like 4 songs on his own, and was just like, okay, this is awesome. Because he's so dedicated to his craft, we knew that it would be easy for us, even being spread out across the U.S. Because when other members fly in and stuff, we can't spend a week, just like working on, learning songs and stuff. And so he brought a level of ease that made it possible for us to move forward in a really productive way, because he's so, like I said, so dedicated to his craft. We knew that he would show up, he would know the songs, he could learn them on his own, even just asking a couple of questions. And so, that's when we solidified that guitar player. And then John, who's on guitar, he was a fill-in bass player when we were touring Rest. He was a fill-in bass player for our bass player at the time. But we've known him since the 90s. He's longtime friend. And we always knew he was just kind of like filling in for Reed on bass. And so we just moved him over to guitar, which he's originally a guitar player anyway. But and so this was the first record that John was able to record with us as well. So
when you say he learned 4 tracks, did he learn 4 of the new ones or 4 of the older ones, which also is pretty hard to learn on your own, I guess?
Well, a little bit of both. He'd learned a couple of old songs, and I sent him the demo versions, because the demo versions, while the foundations were there, we went on after Austin came in, and we developed those songs into what they are now. A lot of layers were added, some changes were added, but it's like Austin is such a skilled player. I'd worked with him before, like what B said, and I knew he was into Cynic, and anyone who's into Cynic is good with me. And so, but we had 2 guitar players. And so when he showed up, he was like, I didn't know which guitar part to learn. So I just went ahead and learned both of them. So that was, it's just like, it was just like, okay, man, you got it. Like, and so, he learned a little bit of the old and the new.
Yeah. And he tells the story as, Jeff called him up and was like, hey, do you want to learn some old songs and record a record with us? And he was like, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, I mean, like, one has to be clear, and that also goes along with what you've already said. I mean, like, doing a half-assed Wake comeback would not do justice to the old stuff. So the old stuff is not only amazing, but also complex. That means, if you come into this band, it's not only a matter of, like your own work ethic, but also your skills. And I think to do that, it's a pretty good sign. And correct me if I'm wrong, but he also not only learned a few of the demos, but he also contributed, for example, a lot of solos on the record, or not a lot of singular parts for himself, right?
Yeah, and that's not something that he normally does. Like, and his, he's kind of like a different animal than us. Like he listens to a lot of different music than we do, and stuff like that, which is great. And so when he, first came in, and Jeff had it all demoed out, and he's like, solo here and this, that, and he's like, well, I don't really play solos, and then he's like, and you're like, okay, well, you play solos now, so sounds great, but it was like that wasn't something that he was, really, was used to doing. But like I said, he's just such a skilled, guitar player that he was, we're like, insert solo here. He's like, okay, what about this? And it's amazing. So.
And I'm sure you've seen too, the just the leap forward in musicianship and skills since, YouTube. And so, everyone that's, 35 and younger, like they can just play like the entire Cryptopsy record on drums by the time they're 13 years old, because they just watch YouTube. And so, watching all these younger musicians they just shoot straight to the top of their abilities because of the resources that they have. And, it's a great thing. And I wish we would have had YouTube when we were growing up. We had to like rewind the VHS tape of Slayer, to try to figure out what position Kerry King was in or whatever. Yeah. So.
Well, and I think every generation gets better and better. That's just evolution, right?
Yeah, because they start at a different level. Apart from all the musical thing, is it also some bolt of youthfulness to have a clearly younger member in the band?
Well, I think it's inspiring when you watch somebody that's getting to do a lot of things for the first time, getting to be on getting to be in a magazine for the first time, getting to go, play a show outside of their hometown for the first time. When you get to see somebody that's just so, they're just so energetic in that way, and their spirit hasn't been crushed yet.
They have not known the business long enough.
You're right. Like playing, like when you do like a 60-day tour, it kind of separates the men from the boys, and
Definitely.
It's generally after a 60-day tour, most people either decide, yes, this is something I do want to do for the rest of my life, or I am done. I never want to see the rest of these people ever again. And, so it's like, we've played music for so many decades now that, like we've kind of weeded out, the people who aren't prepared to do that. And there's nothing wrong with people not wanting to do that. It's really hard. That's, but back to the non-spirit crushing stuff. He's really great. It's watching him get so excited and enjoy so many things. It's really great for us. It makes us feel good to watch that.
I mean, like you've now dropped the word 60-day tour plan so often. I'll have two questions concerning that. So first of all, you've already played like a release show in your hometown in Little Rock. How was that, being back on stage?
It was incredible.
Yeah,
it was absolutely incredible. So, we played the entire record from beginning to end in its entirety. We did it the night before in Nashville, and then we also did it in Little Rock, where we played the full record from beginning to end. And in Little Rock, we filmed it as well, and we multi-tracked it so we can mix it, and we're going to try to release it, as a live thing, because a lot of it is we're not able to do those long tours at this time, just because we still have some young kids in the families, and we have some commitments at home that make it to where, anytime we leave town, it's got to make sense. We want to play to the people. We want to play the most people that we can. We want to have the biggest impact that we can. And we just it just needs to make sense. So, the fact that we can have this live recording to share, because we've always been a live band. That's and it's hard to capture that in the studio, and so we worked really hard on the production of this record because we feel like that it is the closest production that we've ever gotten to being the live band that we are. And so, hopefully when this live recording, when it's done, I don't know what's going to happen with it as far as like release or anything, but, we will have that to where we can share that with the world. Like, this is us live playing the record, and sorry, we can't come to your town right now, but here's a recording of us playing the record in its entirety.
Yeah. At the end of the day, though, we love playing live music. It's something that's very important to us. And we want to, it's like I said before, playing is, pure catharsis for us. And so when, we get to go on that, when you get the six of us on a stage and, the energy of the crowd and all of that together, it sends you onto, a different kind of journey, and taking the crowd with you on that journey is very special to us. When that happens. So we want to play as much as humanly possible. It's just making sure everything lines up that makes it where certain members can be able to leave home to do it.
So I've seen that you have already 3 more gigs slotted for the next couple of months, but are there gonna be plans to take this outside of the US?
I mean, I would love to. Me, Jeff, John, Reed, we're all travelers. We all stay traveling. I mean, we're traveling now. We all stay traveling. So the offer has to make sense, So hopefully the offers will start coming in that make a lot of sense. That'll make it where we can do that. But yeah, we definitely, like I said, most of us are travelers in our everyday lives. So hopefully we can.
And we did Roadburn and, Hellfest and previously, and that was some of our favorite experiences, and the touring that we did around with Dragged into Sunlight, when we did the European run, and they're just so amazing. But like we really want to get back over there. We love the culture there, how music is so part of the forefront of the culture. It's not it's not a hobby, it's part of who you are. In Europe. And we want to get back over there as soon as we can. Hopefully, if not 2025, hopefully 2026, we'll definitely be flying over the ocean.
It's at the same time, it's very interesting to hear you talking about, constant travelers, and we're on the road and we like to take the thing outside of the US. At the same time, I would say that Rwake has always been a band that is very much a Southern band, where one can definitely hear the roots of, for example, your Arkansas home state. Is that something that is also important?
Yeah.
Not only, but is it important for you to show those roots?
Well, I would say, when we were younger, we all started playing music together when we were in our teens, early 20s, and, it was a direct, having that outlet. It was a direct response to, the poverty and oppression that we had lived through for our young lives, and that's something that I don't think a lot of people, you have to have experienced something like that to understand it. I mean, to this day, it's still, as a woman, have no rights in my own state.
Let's not go into politics. I'm going to vomit.
Okay, that's fine. But when we were younger, like, you couldn't even have long hair if you were a man, So, that's dealing with that oppression. I think, it's while it's not an important part of our like, we're not proud of that. But we're just a result of it.
Yeah.
But I think, we come from we come from a area where music has always been very, very deep rooted. I mean, we come from the home of the blues, and like we're right next to the crossroads, and we're right next to Memphis, where the birth of American rock and roll started with Elvis, and Johnny Cash is from Arkansas. I mean, we have like these deep roots of music here.
Poverty and oppression.
And other broke musicians, other broken people. But yeah, so I think the music that we play, I don't think we have a choice in that. I think it's just who we are. It's just where we come from. That's kind of just in our DNA, and part of the geology below our feet is it just comes up through us and it comes out of the air. And there's a lot of people that call us a sludge band and stuff like that. And while we feel like we're a little bit different than that, we've always considered ourselves to be quite more progressive and more ceremonial. The reason that we are called a sludge band is because we breathe the same air as New Orleans, and like us and our friends in Acid Bath and I Hate God and Soylent Green, like we're all in this together, and we all kind of come from the same earth, and so it was just kind of inevitable for us to be in the same category as bands like that. But that's just part of where we come from. And I think that goes the same for where every band comes from. I think that their geology just kind of comes through their music. Like I was saying in the beginning, like Tenhi, is like, brings out the Finnish roots, like, I mean, when you hear it and like Wardruna, they bring out that Viking culture, I think it's just kind of part of where you come from.
Definitely. It's interesting, Brittany, that you've already mentioned the rightlessness of women in your home state. But at the same time, you as a band, and you, Brittany, yourself, you are at the center of the band, not only sound-wise, but also when I look at the artwork. You've arranged the four members of a band in a kind of triangle, and you yourself are in the middle of it. Is that something that is important to you, and also Jeff, to you, like to show like, okay, this is our front man, our energy peddler, as you call it?
Well, I don't think we're very lucky, especially having 6 members, that none of us are very selfish. None of us really want any, no one deserves any more, light than the next guy. I would never consider myself a front man in any way. I'm just an equal contributor to something that's bigger than all of us. And so but yeah, we're really lucky that none of us are selfish in any ways of like, I hear like, even with our guitar players, there's not one that's like, I'm the lead and I'm they're like, they're both equally as important as each other, as the other. But I think I've probably had to fight harder than most other people to get anything that I've got because of where I come from.
Yeah, and like we're very fortunate that B is not only she's the hardest working member of the band. I mean, she's constantly lining things up and making sure that everything is rolling as it should. And so like I think that's just that the universe works in mysterious ways like that. Like whenever who's putting out the most energy, they're just gonna migrate to the center of the picture, and they're gonna it's just kind of the way the world works. So we're very fortunate. But yeah, it takes all 6 of us for sure.
Talking about the artwork of a record, you do notice that you share a similarity with one of the most famous movies of the 90s.
No, please do tell.
Which one?
Silence of the Lambs. It has the butterfly at the center of it all.
Yeah, and
who's the serial killer?
I mean, yeah, the cicada has followed us since our beginning in the 90s. We've always had a cicada floating around us.
Yeah, it was always part of our logo. And so in crafting the artwork for the new record, it was really important for us to do something different, instead of just, hiring an artist, to produce some art for us. It was really important for us to build something that was real and photograph it. So, with all of the artwork within the record, every single thing is hand placed, from each grain of sand to each stick to each flower. Even the symbols on the back were all handmade by a local jewelry artist. It was all handcrafted. And I think it perfectly, I think it perfectly describes the music. To me, it's all hand in hand as far as being born of the earth. So we absolutely love it, and we love how it's got bones and represents death, but yet it's hauntingly beautiful all at the same time. It has a real delicateness to it that I think is that you can find all throughout our music, where a lot of it's, like heavy, doom riffs and stuff like that. There's also like a real intricately beautiful, hauntingly beautiful edge to it. And I think that shows in the artwork.
Yeah, it's the same way, when people ask, or if people ask me to describe the sound of your band, I would say like, okay, take 50% Heilung, take 50%, let's say Baroness, and then you have a slight idea of what this band is about. What I like about the artwork, and I would like to come back to that, is that you've mentioned everything is handcrafted, and you see that. It's very clear from looking at the artwork that this is not AI and that is not some computer graphic. That is like real existing things. And it's also very open to interpretation. For example, if I look at the artwork in one of the corners, I see, how do you call that thing? It's not the thing with which you need in maths to draw circles. I forgot it. But you know what I mean, right?
Compass.
So yeah, and then and then you all of a sudden have that, and it's like giving directions and stuff like that. Again, it's very open to interpretation. I have a feeling as if through your artwork you're also communicating with the audience, but you're not dictating the topic. You're open to everybody's interpretation.
Yes, I love it. Yes, very much so. Very much so. Yes.
I think that's the best description of that anyone has given of our music so far, all the way from the Heilung Baroness combination to the recognition that it is open to interpretation. Because at the end of the day, our lyrics are open to interpretation. Our music is open to interpretation. We do not want to tell you what it means. We want it to mean something to you, and what it means to you is more important than what it means to us.
Yeah, and every time you listen to it, it's all about provoking emotions and stuff. And so every time you hear it, it may provoke a different emotion and a different feeling and a different interpretation, because it does for me personally.
Okay. When I listened to the record and also again looked at the artwork and made up my mind of how I would describe it, I came up with two feelings, and I would like you to tell me which one you would adopt more: melancholy as a surrogate for sadness, or nostalgia as a surrogate for pride. Which one of those is more to you the idea, or which is closer to it, melancholy or nostalgia?
I would go with melancholy. And just because when I'm watching, we're old and we have to listen to subtitles, and so or like closed captions. And so anytime like cool music's playing, they'll be like, melancholy music plays.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll go with melancholy.
Yeah, definitely.
You never hear nostalgic music plays.
I mean, I think nostalgia is definitely fair. I would not rule out nostalgia as a valid point there. The roots are deep, as nostalgia makes sense there. But I would say melancholy as well, just because that's closer to emotion that I feel like is definitely present.
You've already mentioned, like the video for one of the tracks and the artwork. It all has some kind of ritualistic aspect. But on stage, it's very much a rock show. Isn't that a cool dichotomy?
Well, I also think it's also very, for like a lot of our like hardcore, diehard fans, it's a very religious experience for them. And it's very ritualistic. Even just, the social media posts before, our show, our hometown show, everybody was like, saying, I can't wait for the ritual to begin. And that's not something that we bred. That's, it just kind of came about. And so I think you would have to experience us live to kind of make that connection. Because it is a very much a rock show. But it's also, there's, when, for me personally, when I'm playing live, I'm so present that it takes you to a place of transcendence that, and then to take the audience with you on that journey is really an amazing, and to me, ritualistic experience. That almost always happens, probably because of the fact that we don't get to play live very often. So yeah, that's.
You mean that makes it more precious?
I definitely do. But even back when we were doing 60-day tours and there would only be like 5 people in the audience, we still gave it 100% on, every single time we played. Whether it was 60 shows in a row with nobody there or whether it was a room full of people, we always took a lot of pride in that, in the fact that it didn't matter, how many people were playing for it. We were going to give them everything that we had.
And I think too that, a lot of the rock show angle is very valid because, not only do we do these emotional 15-minute songs with all of these dynamics, we also aren't afraid to cover AC/DC and, do a Black Sabbath cover. And I think that, I think as someone who, as a listener and as an audience member for other bands, like, I think, that's very rewarding to go to a show and a band just take you to this crazy place and then be like, and now how about a Pentagram cover? Like, I think that's, that kind of solidifies in a lot of ways, like the fun of coming to see one of our shows is you kind of never know what you're going to get.
Well, yeah, because it's very heavy, as far as like the emotional, the emotion for it is very heavy, but we don't take ourselves too serious. I think we balance that well.
It's interesting that with all your answers, you always give me points to connect with. You've spoken about the somewhat short tracks on your records, somewhere. I mean, like the shortest one on the new one is, apart from the last one, which is like an outro, the shortest one is 8 minutes, how do you compose that, Jeff? Do you compose it as one track or as parts, which you then later put together?
So, we've always been very long form music listeners and long form art in general. Watch the movie from beginning to end. You read the book from beginning to end. You listen to Dark Side of the Moon from beginning to end. And that's where we come from. And so in order to create these experiences, it takes time. It takes time to get you there. It takes time to get you, to move you. It takes time. And so, that's always been very important to us as a band. And when the music that I was speaking of earlier, when the music started to show up in my head in 2018, it kind of came out of nowhere. And I don't take a lot of credit for it because I really just feel like I captured it and I channeled it. I really kind of I don't feel like I intentionally wrote any of this music. I feel like it just floated overhead and I was fortunate enough to grab it. But yes, those songs became present to me in the forms that they are. And we even have a longer song that we haven't even tapped into because there was 2 sessions that happened, one in 2018 and one in 2021, where each session ended up in an hour's worth of music that's clearly Rwake music. But we haven't even got to all of it yet. And so, some of the stuff is even longer than what's on the record, but as much as I wish we could, and I appreciate music that is, I listen to Anal Trump and I listen to, Napalm Death and bands that have, 13-second songs. And I love that. But, for what we do, it's a little bit different. And so, it's important for us to be able to create that journey. And so, yes, they are written from beginning to end on purpose, and not just song by song, but the album itself. We've always been very serious about how the song track listings and in what order that the songs play, because we want you to listen to the record from beginning to end. And if you notice on this record, the last melody that you hear on the record is the first melody that you hear on the record. So it creates a loop.
Yes, which to me is like the underlying theme of the entire record is, it's the circle.
We live in circles,
but because dynamics are so, yes, right. And, dynamics are just really important to us. And so I don't even really like to think of like when I look at our record, I don't think of like, okay, well, this song or that song. I think of like, well, this piece of music, and each piece of music contributes to the next piece of music, which contributes to, to create the overall journey as a whole, But because the song or the pieces of music are so long, each individual piece of music can take you on its own journey in itself.
It can, but of course, as you say, like it's like traveling the world. Of course, you travel, for example, from South Africa to India. True, that is one constant travel. But in the end, the first thing that you will tell your friends is, oh, this was a cool journey from beginning to end. You will at first not talk about single chapters. You will talk about the effect of the whole journey on yourself. That is definitely clear. I have a few more questions before we come to the infamous quickfire round. The first one is let me have a look so that I don't say it wrong. So the distant constellation and the psychedelic incarceration, which is an awesome track. Again, one of the shorter ones on the record. But you are using a spoken word element by Dandy Mangrum. How did the idea come about?
You take this?
Yeah, sure.
So, so Jim Dandy is, I think our internet's coming.
A musician who went to prison.
Well, Jim Dandy is the singer of Black Oak, Arkansas, and Black Oak, Arkansas is one of the biggest bands of all time, most famous and successful bands from Arkansas in history. And they are a legend to us. But they're also, quite troubled in a lot of ways, and they kind of, they didn't quite reach their full potential business wise because they were just so crazy. And that's something else that we can relate to. We looked up to crazy forever. And so, they're legends to us. And our singer CT actually worked on a documentary about Black Oak, Arkansas. Mm-hmm. And him and Jim Dandy became friends and started corresponding. And Jim Dandy actually wrote that spoken piece. He wrote that poem for us years ago. And we weren't able to get it just because everyone's just so crazy. We couldn't get in the same room with microphones and everything and actually get him in there to record it. So it wasn't until after the record was done that we drove to his house in Black Oak, Arkansas, and we spent all day at his house, and he was telling us the most amazing stories about John Lennon and the CIA and all of these just mind-blowing stories. And it was probably one of the coolest days of my life was the day we went and recorded that poem. And, it's when that song first came to me back in 2018, I could hear his voice on it. I knew we had to get him. And so we were fortunate enough to get him. And yeah, we're super honored that he's on the record. He's a hero to us. There would be no David Lee Roth without him. And that's a fact. So,
I mean, another interesting part of it is like none of us heard the poem that he had written until we actually recorded it. Like none of us knew, but we were like, okay, we trusted that, that whatever it was going to be, we were going to use it. So it was pretty interesting when we finally got to hear it. I mean, of course it's up for interpretation just like everything else, but to have, knowing, Jim's history, so to have him doing a public service announcement on our record was absolutely amazing to me. When I heard it, I was just like, wait, what? And it's like my brain broke for a second. I was like, hold on, wait, what did he just say? I love it. It's so, it's so great. And then for people who don't know a lot about Black Oak, Arkansas, some people just
I have to admit, I didn't before.
Okay, so if you're really into, are you into like progressive 70s?
I've already listened to some of the Black Oak, Arkansas stuff, so it's really, really good.
Oh, so if you go back and you watch like like on YouTube or something, if you just put in Black Oak, Arkansas Midnight Special, there's like 3 or 4 songs on there like you can watch them playing live with like 3 guitar players, and it's super progressive stuff. Yeah. And a lot of bands, even people, like Wino from The Obsessed, like that was like a major influence for them. It's So for anybody who hasn't seen any of those Black Oak, Arkansas Midnight Specials videos, I would definitely suggest to go back, especially if you're into prog rock, because it's there's really what they were doing was really pushing the limits back then. They were really doing something different.
Very much, and especially very much for the US, where we have to admit that prog rock came to the US much later than to Britain. So it's like, and even if we compare it to the timeline of British prog, then they are very much in the thick of a fin when it comes to timelines.
And they were like in the middle. They were from a town that like literally a population of like 12. So they had no influence from other, musicians, like they really didn't. Like that was to them was just so authentic to them, because they didn't have access to go and, to listen to a lot of the other stuff, they were very,
very organic.
Yes.
It's also interesting to look at Rwake's, I don't want to say following because that's definitely not it, but if you look at your Spotify page and then you click on what other fans like, it's very interesting that you have a lot of bands dropped there that came way behind you time-wise, like that some of those bands there didn't even exist when you released Rest, sorry. So, and that is very interesting. Would you say that with the new record, you also, like you didn't write it for a new audience, but you gather a new audience? Did you notice that, for example, in Nashville or in Little Rock on the shows?
Oh, definitely. I think, and we've definitely noticed that. And I don't want to puff us up too much, but back when we put out Voices of Omen and Rest, I think it was a lot for people. Like a lot of people couldn't really wrap their head around it. It was like it was just too different. It was like there was too much going on. There wasn't enough singing, or there wasn't enough screaming, there wasn't enough doom riffs, there wasn't enough fast riffs, there wasn't. It was like it was really hard for people to just like, what is this? It's too much of too many different things. And I think nowadays people are a lot more, attuned to that. And a lot of it's because of, like just internet from scrolling, our attention spans have changed. And so while you would think, okay, with our attention spans changing, a 15-minute song would never go over well. Well, a 15-minute song with 7 different genres in it is like what a lot of people scroll. And so while it was not intentional in any way, I think people are just a lot more adept to listening to something that's that different now because of just the way that everything has changed, And maybe it was, 15 years ago, people were different too, as far as like the crowds that we were playing for. Were just more of like in their comfort zone. Like I listen to this and I only listen to this and I only listen to this. And I think people I guess if they've gotten older or whatever, people are just more diverse in what they listen to, because a lot of that's probably because of access to music as well too. The access to music has 100% completely changed over the last 13, 14 years, with streaming and everything else. Like there's no gatekeepers anymore that are like, getting to decide what people get to listen to, and to the extent that, for a lot of like journalists and stuff, it's like, it has to be overwhelming because there's just so much stuff. Like we've heard multiple journalists be like, I can't keep up. It's, it's almost frustrating. And I'm like, well, what a privilege, like what a time to be, alive when
it's a so curse and a privilege. Trust me.
Yes. And it's like, but it's like, that's, you can't keep up, but that's a wonderful thing to have, because at the end of the day, if you're a good band, you're a good band and you're going to rise to the top. And if and so, I think as far as, back to the original question of reaching a new audience, yes, I think people are definitely more adept nowadays to kind of wrap their head around what we're doing, where before it was just like, I don't know, it's just too much going on, and so while no, it was not intentional for us in any way, it's just that's who we are. It's just, we've just grown, more and more over these years.
Mm-hmm. I have one last question before we come to the infamous quickfire round at the end. And you've spoken about, doing a Pentagram track here, doing a Sabbath cover here. Now, let's turn the table. Which band or project would you like to cover which of your tracks?
Ooh.
Dang, that's a good one.
Oh, that might
know.
be simple for me.
Go ahead, I'm thinking.
Pink. I want Pink Floyd to cover.
Wait. Then it's already becoming problematic. With or without Waters? With or without Gilmore? You know, like you say, it's easy.
It would have to be Gilmore.
Yeah. It has to be Gilmore. I mean, can we bring back living? I mean, like dead people too? Or
we want to bring back Sid? Okay, yeah. Well, okay, yeah, okay. So, but which track would it be?
Oh, Distant Constellations and the Psychedelic Incarceration, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, they turn that into a 2-hour thing.
Yes, please. Yes.
And so, this is kind of my answer will be a little bit of a cheat because it's already happened, and I got to watch it, and it just made my heart just so explode with love. There's some kids in Little Rock. They're in a band called Little Rock Massacre, and the other brothers in a band called Dioxide, and they covered The Return of Magic as soon as it came out. Like as soon as the video came out, they learned it. They're like, I think Jed is 18 years old, and his younger brother, I think, is 11. He just turned 11. And so to watch an 11-year-old kid on drums and his 18-year-old brother on guitar playing The Return of Magic, as soon as it came out, they filmed it and sent it. And as soon as I saw that, I mean, I don't think I could find a better cover of a Wake song than watching them do that.
Yeah, probably also because of a family component, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're just so young and they're so inspired, and it was just so amazing.
Yeah, they were inspired by you guys. Brittany, Jeff, first of all, thanks for all the insights, but nobody leaves these kinds of interviews with us without having to go through the infamous quickfire round at the end. You will always get 2 alternatives, and you have to choose one and give a short explanation. So let's start off with Acid Bath. Which record would you rather put on right now? Pagan Terrorism Tactics or When the Kite String Pops?
Ooh, man. So I would have to say When the Kite String Pops, but I would say that the only reason I would pick it first is because I knew I could put on Pagan Terrorism Tactics afterwards and keep the chronology alive, and because Pagan Terrorism Tactics was so mature in comparison to Kite String. So the transition between Kite String and Pagan, the amount of maturity that they gained there, like they became like a arena rock band to me after Kite String.
Yeah. So Brittany, you're first. Pagan. You would also go Pagan? Okay. Yeah. So then, Brittany, for you, I'll give you Cynic. Focus versus, what was it? I looked it up for myself so I don't fuck it up once more. I hate album titles. I always forget
them. I'll go ahead and...
Focus or Traced in Air?
I can't answer that. I'm not a Cynic fan. I'm sorry.
So I will take that one. I love so I would definitely say Traced in Air just because it took me a minute to get into it, to be totally honest with you, but it has grown on me like a terrible tumor. But Focus, Focus changed my life. And so I think I might take it for granted, so I'm going to stick with the new one.
Mm-hmm. Then let's step back a little bit. I'll give you Neurosis versus Yob or Yob.
Yob, yeah. Well, Neurosis for sure. Neurosis. I mean, I have a Neurosis tattoo that I got, back when Through Silver and Blood came out. So definitely Neurosis. But Yob is like great friends of ours. I mean, same with Neurosis, but. Yob, I love Yob to death. We played a show with them 25 years ago with like 15 people there, and it was great. And it was, but I would definitely have to, like I said, I've got a Neurosis tattoo, for Christ's sake, so I got to go with that.
Yeah, Yob is love. There's no question about that. When we say Yob is love, we mean that. Like, they are love to us. They are the definition of the love emotion.
And Chris, our other singer, he has a Yob tattoo. So
so Yob is love, but there's no, you can't, you have to choose Neurosis if they are a choice in anything that happens to you in your life. They are the pyramid builders. They are the monolith holders, and yeah, they are unbeatable. Enemy of the Sun, Souls at Zero, are more important than the Bible.
Ooh, don't let the Vatican hear it, or otherwise you will be expect from anything Christian for 50 years. Just like that.
Not my fault. It's not my fault that it's true.
Yeah. As I said, I think there is a lot of rootsiness in Wake's music. So I thought of a few couples here. I'll give you Blackfoot versus Government Mule.
Oh, Government Mule. Love Government Mule is one of my favorite. Was, I wouldn't say was, but definitely one of my favorite bands. I've got a Dose shirt that I've had for years and years and years that I still wear, and then I eventually had to cut it into a patch to put on my suitcase.
I had to do the same thing with a Roses shirt. I put it on my one of my jackets.
Yeah, I definitely. I would pick Government Mule just because I listen to them more. But I think Blackfoot, their influence should never be overlooked or ignored. Like what Blackfoot did is incredible, and they even did some amazing stuff in the late '80s, early '90s. It kind of sounds like action movie music. I can't remember the name of the record, but Blackfoot continued on doing a lot of really professional music. I mean, the production's great, the songs are great, the playing is great. So Blackfoot can't be ignored either, but Government Mule for me on that one.
ZZ Top versus CCR.
I'm gonna go ZZ Top.
Yeah.
So
ZZ Top, I sent Dusty Hill a Father's Day card one year because to me he is such a father figure to me, like, because I'm a bass player that just learned to play drums, and so Dusty Hill is like a father to me in my mind, in my imagination, and I love him, and he plays with such class and grace, or he did, rest in peace, of course, but he was probably one of the most influential bass players in my life, and ZZ Top was one of my first concerts. We saw the Afterburner tour in 1986, I believe. It was one of my first concerts. So yeah. ZZ Top all the way.
Yeah, I'm more of a Tejas fan, but yes, ZZ Top for sure.
Dr. John versus R.L. Burnside.
I mean,
you would have to go R.L. Burnside.
That's a tough one because, they may seem similar to folks outside of the United States, but they really could not. They are completely different music styles. So, R.L. Burnside is definitely more deep-rooted, very singular, minimalistic, whereas Dr. John is humongous and, way more Cajun. So, I mean, damn, I don't know if I could pick just because they're so different, like if they were more similar, I would probably have an easier time picking.
To me, it's also difficult to pick because one is very extroverted, Dr. John, and one is more introspective, and that's R.L. Burnside. If I had to pick, I would pick Burnside at the moment. Probably tomorrow it would be Dr. John.
I'm glad you told me because I was curious as to what your choice would be on that. So thank you for telling me. I understand why it's R.L. Burnside too.
Junior Kimbrough versus Muddy Waters.
Oh, Muddy Waters. I'm a huge Muddy Waters. I love all super emotional music, if you can't tell. So I actually listen to a lot of Muddy Waters.
And Kimbrough is great, but Muddy Waters has got to. I mean, I'd probably get struck by lightning if I didn't pick Muddy Waters. Like today, I'd probably get struck by lightning like right now through the window.
I have two more. So let's give you the choice between Black Oak, Arkansas and High on the Hawk.
Oh, Black Oak, Arkansas.
The two records.
For sure.
Yeah.
Between the two records.
Yeah, the two records.
Yeah. Because I was like, man, I've never heard of that band. It's a cover band.
No. The two records. I have to admit, those are by now the only two Black Oak, Arkansas records that I could listen to time-wise, but So you have to choose between those two.
Well, I would choose If an Angel Came to See You, but
Not a choice.
but that wasn't one of your choices. So that's one that you
I hadn't listened to that one yet, so I'll take that as the next step.
Go back to listen to that one, and in the meantime, I'll go self-titled.
Yeah, I'll go High on the Hog for sure. I love both records, but I'm gonna pick High on the Hog.
And it's very good that you do so, because otherwise my next question would be just a dumbass thing. Pulled pork versus brisket.
Pulled pork versus brisket.
I'm not a vegetarian, but I'm not a big meat eater. But if I had to, I would go brisket.
So for me, it all comes down to who pulled the pork and what attention they had to the detail of the pulling of the pork. So
you
a lot
yourself
of times when
do it.
Oh yeah, if I did it, oh man,
Yeah.
I would probably work. My brisket would probably be better than my pulled pork, but you just got to be careful around here because the pulled pork, you get these big globs of fat in there.
Yeah.
If it wasn't well pulled. So, but with brisket's always safe. Like very rarely do you get bad brisket. But if it was mine, pulled pork, if I did it, would be the best.
So when you come to Europe next time, I'll provide the meat and the place, and you show me how you do that.
Yeah, I'll put on my gloves.
Don't worry.
Just watch.
So
Just wash your hands.
Yeah, and I'll show you some of my cooking stuff. Learned that sometime years ago. So, Brittany, Jeff, first of all, thanks for all your time. Thanks for the detailed answers, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. And for everybody, listen to Return of Magic. It is a return to peak form, and it's a really wonderful record. Thanks for music, folks, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Thurston, so much for having us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.